Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Today, we have the opportunity to learn from two motivated speakers. First, Marsha Aizumi, mother, educator, author, and advocate for the LGBT community, who serves on the National Board of PFLAG, which stands for Parents, Families, and Friends United with LGBTQ Individuals. She also has been recently appointed to former Vice President Biden's foundation to work on his Equality Advisory Council. In addition, she has addressed well over 100 groups in our nation, as well as in China and Japan, and created a safe high school diploma program in numerous cities in order to protect and change the way we accept and value people who are born different from each other. As to Marsha, she was born in Cleveland, Ohio. Her grandparents were Japanese immigrants, and her parents moved to Los Angeles when she was a child. She grew up here, received a bachelor's degree from Cal State with a major in American Studies and a secondary teaching credential. She then married Ted Aizumi, who later opened a hair salon, and she became the president of an insurance agency, and then for 15 years served as a director of a charter school. What changed her life was her desire to have a family despite a medical condition that made this impossible. And so, to become a mother and continue her heritage, in 1988, with the aid of a Japanese agency, she adopted Aiden, who everybody thought was a female. And several years later, Stephen, a newborn male. Now, Aiden turned out to be a tomboy with a dislike for anything girlish, who became an exceptional golfer, made the school team, and was elected the MVP 4 years in a row. Unfortunately, he was subjected to abusive taunting and bullying during most of his school years, which even became worse when he came out as a lesbian. He endured 3 physical attacks, was never able to fit in, suffered from depression, and became agoraphobic, which is a fear of going out of the house, was subject to uncontrollable panic attacks, had suicidal thoughts, and began cutting himself to relieve the pain of unrelenting rejection. He then left school and completed his high school credits in a homemade program, a home study program. In 2008, Aiden felt ready and safe enough to share his true identity. He changed his name to Aiden, acquired new identification, and underwent a series of medical procedures, some of which continue to this day. And this became the journey to become his true self, along with the incredible journey of his traditional but ever-loving mother, who, despite her fear of speaking in public, became an honored national advocate in behalf of the LGBT community. Aiden also found his voice, told his story at high schools and colleges and churches, marched in Washington, D.C., and became a paid apprentice that included countless training and service projects. He graduated from the University of Laverne, where he received his bachelor's degree in education, and is now in the final semester of completing his master's. He also realized a dream that he thought would never, ever happen. After a lengthy courtship, he married a young woman that he met at a PFLAG program, and they are now married, and they're planning to have a family. Marsha and Aiden have received numerous awards for their work as activists. Their book, which is available to you today, Two Spirits, One Heart, has been acclaimed for its understanding of how difficult it is to navigate when one's biological sex and gender identity are not aligned. And today, you will have the opportunity to really understand their journey, the journey they took together, and the cause to which they now devote their lives. And it's now my pleasure to present Marsha and Aiden Aizumi.
So, good morning. I hope everyone is enjoying their breakfast. I want to start by thanking CCEJ for having us here today for the Interfaith Intercultural Breakfast. On behalf of my mom and I want to say how grateful we are to have the opportunity to speak here this morning. It's so amazing to see all these faces bright and early in the morning on this beautiful sunny day. Before I get started, though, I want to explain a little bit about how we're going to break up our presentation. It's broken down into 3 parts. First, I'm going to give you a little bit of a glimpse into our story. And then my mom is going to talk about the emotions she faced as a parent. And we'll close each by sharing a moment or a lesson that we feel has shaped our advocacy. So I'm going to start at the beginning, in the early years of my life. And as Jean mentioned, I was a tomboy growing up. By the time I reached elementary school, I had left the dresses and bows my mom loved so much behind for dinosaur t-shirts and boys' dockers that I treasured. The first time I realized I was different from my peers was in first grade. That was the first time somebody asked me, "Are you a boy or a girl?" Yet, even as a tomboy, I realized I was different. And realizing I was different, I did well in school. I had friends, and I was happy. When middle school rolled around, everything changed. The boys who I shared the most affinity with and saw me only as a girl and an outsider. I still identified as a tomboy and shared no common interests with the girls that I grew up with. I found myself alone without peers to connect with. When I looked around, it seemed everyone around me had settled into their identities as young boys and young girls, and I could not see myself reflected in either group accurately. With no idea how I could better make connections with my peers and feeling lost in my own identity, anxiety and depression became an all too familiar daily battle for me. In high school, I continued to struggle to find my place amongst peers. This was only strained further when I came out my sophomore year of high school as a lesbian. I didn't know anything about the transgender community or what gender identity, a person's internal self of being male, female, neither or both, was. But with the knowledge I had at the time, coming out as a lesbian seemed like the best fit. I had no idea what the impact of this decision would be. I was one of the only out people in my school, and without a strong connection to peers, I was an easy target for bullying. As Jean also mentioned, because of this, I finished high school through independent study. But that wasn't all. The church that I was baptized in and where I spent summer vacations in Vacation Bible School had asked me to no longer attend and to leave. My anxiety and depression escalated, and I struggled with self-harm and thoughts of suicide. I attempted community college, but at this point, I was barely able to leave the house without having panic attacks. and after 2 failed semesters, I found myself on academic probation. I felt like I was wandering around in the dark, trying to find the right door to open, but not having any keys to open them with. It would take me years to figure out the key to opening my own door and finding my place in the world. And that key was my gender identity. 6 months before my 21st birthday, I decided to come out again. I call that my coming out 2.0. The upgraded version always tends to be a little better anyway. But I came out this time with newfound knowledge. First, I understood what gender identity, or again, my own internal sense of being male, was, and that my gender identity did not have to match the sex that I was assigned at birth. So I came out as a transgender man, meaning someone born assigned female at birth, but whose internal sense of self is male. And it was this process of self-discovery that changed everything for me. I came out to my family, and despite not knowing anything about what it meant to be transgender, they accepted me. They made the intentional decision to face the unknown, stepping blindly into the dark and turning on the light, also known as education. And it was a process, and it didn't happen overnight. But I'm proud and privileged to stand and say that I have the unconditional support and love of my family and of the people closest to me. And I know that this is not always the case for many other people. So I went back to community college. I made up all my failed classes and transferred to the University of Laverne. I graduated in 2015 with honors and with a bachelor's degree in liberal studies, and am now in my final semester of graduate school, where I will finish with my master's in education. I got married, like Jean mentioned, to a fiercely strong woman who supports and loves me unconditionally for all that I am. Today, I can stand before you and say that the person whose anxiety and depression made each day a struggle is a distant memory. Today, I can stand here and tell you that I do well in school, I have friends, and I am happy.
Now that Aiden has told you his story, oh, my voice is shaking already. Oh my gosh. I would like to share mine, not so much chronologically, but through the feelings of a mother. I wish I could stand before you and say the minute Aiden came out that I celebrated his courage and his honesty, but I did not. I retreated into a lot of negative feelings. First, I was filled with so much guilt and shame. There are things I said or did I wish that were never spoken or done, such as, Aiden, can you grow your hair out or wear more feminine clothes? I realized these words probably hurt him more than all the bullying and harassment he experienced in school, because they came from a mother who at that time he probably felt didn't accept him for all of who he was. I felt guilty of working too much and not being there when he needed me. And all this guilt led to me feeling like a terrible mother. I was ashamed of bringing dishonor to my Asian family. I was ashamed of not being the best mother I could possibly be. And I was ashamed I couldn't love and accept my child unconditionally, because I was so terrified for his future. But today I've come to realize I honor best my family name by standing by my son and proudly loving him. I am so proud of who he has become. And honestly, I'm proud of myself as a mother, the mother I have become. I realized at the time I was the best. I realized at the time I was the best mother I knew how to be. And today, I am a better mother. And it is this journey that has helped me to find my voice. My second feeling was a sense of sadness and grief. I was sad because the dream I had for my child was shattered. I thought no white wedding dress, no having children, and no going shopping together or having tea like mothers and daughters would do. I grieved for the loss of my daughter that I loved so much, and so did my husband. But our sadness and grief has been transformed into immense joy. Our family faced many challenges, and because of these challenges, we came out stronger and more grateful for each other and more loving in a deep and honest way. The day my son got married, I cried because he looked so handsome and happy. It didn't matter that he wasn't wearing a white wedding dress. He would have looked pretty ridiculous, actually. Aiden and Mary still want to have a family, so I'm going to be a grandmother one day. Yay! And he loves to go shopping with me because guess who pays for the bill? Transforming our sadness into joy took time and patience, but the result of our commitment to our family raised us to a higher level of trust, appreciation, and love. I am so grateful for this journey that has given us so much. My final and most intense feeling was fear. I feared for the life Aiden would live. I was afraid for his safety and his ability to find a community that would accept all of who he was and is. I was afraid they would judge him as transgender and not as a compassionate and caring human being that he is. I feared he would not be able to live as his true self at home, at work, and in the world. Today I still have fear, but I live more in hope. Aiden will soon be graduating with his master's degree, like he mentioned, and he's married to Mary, a person who loves him with her whole heart. And looking around the room, by the way, compliments to Jacob. A shout out to him. He brought me Kleenex. He's one of the students that's here. So thank you so much, Jacob. And looking around the room and seeing people who are willing to listen to our story makes me feel that there are those in the world who will see my son for all the gifts he can bring. Looking around the room and seeing friends who are here from PFLAG, a national organization of support, education, and advocacy for family, friends, and allies and those in the LGBTQ community, reminds me there are so many working to make the world safer for Aiden. I also see friends from churches and temples, and new friends from organizations that I've met this morning and last night. All of you bring me hope. As a mother, hope is everything to me. So I thank each and every one of you who is here to learn, to grow, and to be more compassionate, bring more compassion to transgender individuals and their families. In closing, Aiden and I would like to share one or two moments in our journey that has defined who we are and has informed our work. Aiden.
So the major lesson that I feel shaped my advocacy is in two parts, and both are surrounding the idea of support. For the longest time, I felt that there were very few Asian Pacific Islander, or API, lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender people besides me. And this may sound silly, considering how many people there are in the world, but the faces I saw in the media or at conferences and events did not reflect someone who looked like me. When the first Okaidi event, which is a Japanese-American LGBT gathering that happened in Little Tokyo, when that event happened, I realized how wrong I was. Here were people, some allies, but many who identified as LGBT themselves, and who were also majority Japanese American, but of the API community. I didn't realize how impactful this moment would be for me. I was able to connect with people whose intersecting identities were like my own. I realized I was not alone, and that I was not the only one who struggled with cultural ideas like shame and honor. And it was here I learned that first lesson, the importance of culturally based events that support these intersecting identities. Second is the idea that even though my church did not accept me, there are faith-based spaces that do. For me, church was a huge part of my support system growing up, and to be asked to leave was extremely painful. For many other LGBT people, religion and faith are also a huge part of their support system. These intersecting identities do not have to remain separate, and recently my mom and I have started to have these conversations in various churches and temples across the country. It is important to me that other LGBT identified people do not have to choose between their identity as an LGBT person and as a person of faith.
The one moment, or maybe two moments, that have defined my journey came many years ago. For the longest time, Aiden couldn't tell me he loved me. I felt he loved me and didn't understand why he couldn't say the words. We had marched together for equality. I had nursed him through his surgeries and supported him in every aspect of his transition. But he still could not speak these words. I had conversations about this with him for over 2 years, and finally I decided to speak with him with my whole heart. My conversation went something like this. Aiden, are you still mad at me for something I've done to you? No, was his response. Are you hurt by things I have said or done, and you can never forgive me? Once again, he said no. Do you think that you can't love me and Mary at the same time? He said he had enough love for both of us. So I finally asked, then why can't you tell me that you love me? He shook his head and said he didn't know, but he would try. That night when he was leaving, I thought to myself, am I going to say I love you to him, knowing he may not respond after I poured my heart out to him? But I decided no matter what, I would say I love you. And so I looked at him as he turned to get into his car, and once again I said, Aiden, I love you so much. And without skipping a beat, he looked at me and said, Mama, I love you more. I wanted to cry. I wanted to cry when I heard those words that I waited so long to hear, but I held back my emotion for fear he would think, I am never going to do that again. But all I could do as I was walking back to our house was think he added the word more. If he would have just said, I love you, that would have been enough. Years later, I remember having this idea, I'm going to say I love you more first. Aiden is always so quick to say things and to come back with these really clever responses, and I'm kind of a slow, plodding thinker that has to formulate my thoughts. So I thought I'm going to be very clever tonight. When he goes, I'm going to say to him, I love you more first. So that's what I did. I looked at him, and this time I said to him, Aiden, I love you more. And without skipping a beat, he looked at me with so much love in his eyes and said, Mama, that's impossible. See, he's clever. He's more clever than I am. So I will let you know I was a puddle. That, I couldn't stop being a puddle that time. And the reason this story defines our journey is because I realized the power of one person to create something they truly believe in. I believed I was going to create an open, honest, and loving relationship with my son, no matter what it took. Now, I'm not saying everyone should pursue relationships with people who might not be willing to return their love. All of us must find family and love in places that are healthy and safe. Some of us must create chosen families where our own families will not accept us. But the most important thing is that you know that you are worthy of love, no matter what others will say. One morning I woke up and realized because of this story that if I wanted the world to be safe for Aiden, it was up to me. I couldn't stand by and expect others to do this work. Just like if I wanted an honest and deep relationship with Aiden, I couldn't stand back and hope that others would make it happen. I hope each of you finds something that you feel passionate about and go out and make a difference with your visibility and voice. I hope each of you know how powerful your love is to change the world. I'm telling you, I feel so much love in this room, and I felt it from the very beginning. The world needs your courage, your commitment, but most of all, your love to make our society more kind and more just. On behalf of our whole family, Aiden and I want to thank CCEJ again, especially Jean and Ann, Kimmy, Catherine, Rose, Carrie, and Daniel for asking us to spend this morning with you. Oh, sorry. It is always my great honor to share this stage with my son. And it has truly been our honor to share our hearts with you this morning. Thank you so much for having us here.